My name is Haley Smith. I'm 33 years old and I froze when I saw the number. 087. That's what my bank account said. 87 cents after years of working overtime, skipping vacations, and building the only real safety net I had. I stared at the app like it was glitching. It had to be a mistake. But deep down, my body already knew. Then I heard it. That laugh. From the back of the family SUV, my brother-in-law Zach said with a smug little smirk, "Come on, Haley. You don't have kids. You live alone. We needed it more." Before I tell you exactly how I took back everything they stole, hit that subscribe button, because you don't want to miss a story like this. I just stood there, outside my parents' house, with the warm sun and the scent of barbecue still hanging in the air. The Smith family reunion banner was still flapping gently in the wind. My little nieces were chasing bubbles. People were still waving goodbye. And I was gutted in silence. That was the day I decided. Not to scream, not to argue, but to make damn sure they'd one day regret ever calling me the one who didn't need it. I remember the moment I first realized my family didn't see me as one of them. It was Thanksgiving, 5 years ago. My sister Brooke and her husband Zach had just bought their third car. Not a practical one. A Tesla SUV. And they parked it sideways in my parents' driveway, like a centerpiece. Everyone oohed and awed. My dad kept asking, "What's the range on this thing?" Like it was a spaceship. Meanwhile, I'd just finished paying off my student loans. Quietly. No parade, no confetti. When I offered to bring a pecan pie to dinner, Brooke joked, "That's cute, Hales. You actually bake?" Some of us don't have that kind of free time. That's how it always was with her. Smile on the surface, acid underneath. I was the career girl. The single one. The one they pitied in family group chats I wasn't even in. But I kept showing up. I brought wine. I played with the kids. I helped Mom clean the dishes after everyone else left. I never asked for anything. Ever. And I hoped, maybe that loyalty would one day be seen. Maybe my effort mattered. Then came the reunion. It was my idea, actually. I offered to organize it, book the Airbnb, plan the food, make sure everyone had what they needed. Brooke was too swamped with the twins' soccer schedule, and Zach said he was working on a huge deal. And so I did it. Took time off work. Fronted the deposit on the lodge, paid the caterer, even covered the custom t-shirts with everyone's names stitched on the back. I told myself they'd pay me back when we split the bill. But when the weekend ended and I gently brought it up, my sister blinked at me like I was speaking Greek. "Oh, we thought you were covering it as a gift," she said. And Zach added, "You make more than us, don't you?" I didn't answer. I just nodded, swallowed the burn in my throat and said, "Sure." But that wasn't the part that shattered me. That came Monday morning, when I checked my bank account, just out of habit, just to see if I could treat myself to coffee after everything. $0.87. At first, I thought it was fraud. I called the bank. They said a series of transfers had been made over the weekend, to a joint PayPal account I didn't recognize. The routing matched mine, but the destination name was someone else's. I asked for a name. They couldn't give me one. But I saw the transactions, all neatly spaced out. Hundreds, then thousands, then every last drop I had. I walked outside, still on the phone with the fraud department, and there they were. Brooke and Zach, loading their car, laughing, acting like they hadn't just stolen years of my effort. I asked one simple question. "Did either of you touch my account?" Brooke blinked, then looked at Zach. And he said it. The line I'll never forget. "Be grateful we took it. You weren't doing anything with it anyway." The words hit me like cold water. My legs didn't even move. My ears rang. They left. I stood there holding my phone like a ghost. That was the moment. That was the snap. Not the scream slam cry kind. The quiet kind. The I will remember every word kind. And that night, I sat at my desk with a cup of stale tea and I opened every document I had on my computer, my resume, my certifications, the side project I never dared pitch, the contacts I hadn't called in years. I whispered one promise to myself: you will never need them again. And one day, they'll need you. And when they do, you won't say a word. Let me tell you exactly how I did it. Because they didn't just take my money. They took my voice. And I took it back, with interest. I wasn't born rich. I wasn't born with connections, shortcuts, or anyone paving my way. What I did have was clarity about who I didn't want to become. My dad used to say I was too independent for my own good. He meant it with love, I think, but it always sounded like a warning. In our house, girls were expected to prioritize family, not fulfillment. Dreams were fine, as long as they didn't interfere with diapers and casseroles. So I learned how to make myself small. I got good at folding myself up neatly in the corners of other people's lives. Supporting roles, never the lead. I graduated college with no debt because I worked 2 jobs through every semester. I skipped spring breaks and holidays, taking double shifts at the bookstore, selling overpriced coffee to students who mocked the prices I memorized. After graduation, I found a quiet rhythm in life. My apartment was modest. 1 bedroom, 2nd floor, no elevator. But it was mine. I decorated it with thrifted art and warm light bulbs. It smelled like cinnamon most days. And peace. It smelled like peace. I had routines. I liked them. A slow Sunday morning with jazz and a book. A grocery run with a handwritten list. I always sent thank you cards. I remembered birthdays. I kept a drawer of just-in-case gifts wrapped and ready. Nobody clapped for any of that, but I didn't need applause. I just wanted a life I could trust. The first time my sister Brooke asked to borrow money, it was for a small emergency. Zach had made a risky investment that didn't pay off, and they were just a few weeks behind on rent. She swore it was temporary. It's just until his bonus clears. I wired her $1,200 the next day. No thank you note, no repayment. But I let it go. I told myself that's what family does. The second time, it was $600 for car repairs, then $200 for school supplies, then $800 for a surprise vet bill. Eventually, she stopped asking. She just expected. And I kept saying yes. Quietly, willingly, naively. I wanted her to see me as more than the single aunt with no real responsibilities. I wanted to be loved. That's the truth. Even if it cost me little pieces of my dignity. At work, I was respected but rarely seen. I was the dependable one. The one who stayed late and covered shifts. The one who fixed broken spreadsheets and smoothed over client emails. My boss once called me a machine. He meant it as praise. I smiled and nodded, then cried in my car. I never took sick days, never missed a deadline, never made a scene. But I saw the way promotions leapt over me, landing on louder voices, flashier smiles. I kept telling myself, be patient, your moment will come. Every time the family gathered, holidays, birthdays, random cookouts, I was the helper. Haley, can you watch the kids? Can you grab more ice? Can you clean up the dishes? No one asked Brooke to lift a finger. She'd sit cross-legged with her perfect lashes, sipping wine and scrolling Instagram while I scrubbed pans. And Zach, he loved taking jabs. Still single, huh? You know they say women hit their expiration date around 35, always with a wink, like it was charming. I laughed along, but something inside me hardened each time. No one stepped in. Not Mom. Not Dad. Just silence and awkward smiles. One summer, I took the kids to the lake while Brooke got her nails done. My niece Lucy asked why I didn't have any children. Before I could answer, my nephew piped in. Because she doesn't have a husband, she's just Haley. Just Haley. That stuck. Still, I kept showing up. Not out of obligation, but hope. Hope that love could be earned. Hope that loyalty would be noticed. Hope that I'd be chosen for something other than convenience. And maybe that's why the reunion meant so much to me. It was a chance to give something big, to prove, once and for all, that I belonged. I planned it with care, picked a location with room for the kids to run and quiet nooks for the elders to rest. I coordinated games, meal plans, and family trivia nights. I even made a slideshow of our childhood photos, set to music that made my mother cry. People laughed, they hugged, they said, "This was the best reunion yet." And for one fleeting moment, I believed I was part of something, that maybe I wasn't just the extra. But the morning after, when I checked my account and saw it drained, that belief died, because none of it was an accident. The withdrawals had been authorized using shared information I'd given Zach once years ago to help him fix a login issue, a forgotten favor, turned into a knife, and the worst part? They didn't even try to deny it. They felt entitled, like my life, my effort, my savings were just sitting there waiting to be claimed. Because in their eyes, I didn't need it. Because in their eyes, I didn't count. But they were wrong. I may have been quiet, but I wasn't weak. That 0.87 didn't just represent my bank account. It represented how they valued me, and I was done accepting that valuation. So I started making calls, reaching out to old contacts, dusting off dreams I had shelved in favor of being the reliable one. I stopped returning Brooke's texts. I declined her birthday invite. I let her sit with silence. And I planned something they would never see coming. Something that would make them feel what I had felt. Not out of spite. Out of symmetry. Because some lessons can't be taught with words. Only with consequences. 2 weeks after the reunion, I received an invitation. Hand-delivered. Cream cardstock, gold foil letters, little floral embossed edges. Brooke's style all over it. You are cordially invited to the Thompson Family Gala, an evening of gratitude. I stared at it like it was a prank. Gratitude? Gratitude for what? Inside was a photo of Brooke, Zach, and their 2 kids, all dressed like they were royalty. And at the bottom, printed in soft cursive, was a quote, "We rise by lifting others. Join us as we celebrate the journey that brought us here." I almost laughed. Until I read the fine print. The event was being held at the Rosemont Country Club, a black-tie gala with a silent auction. And the fundraiser? A family relief fund for struggling parents building generational wealth. That's when the pit opened in my stomach. They were raising money for themselves, branding themselves as struggling parents, as self-made. With what? My stolen savings? I wanted to scream. But instead, I RSVP'd. Yes, with quiet delight. The night of the gala, I slipped into a navy dress, understated, elegant, the kind of thing that blends into shadows. I arrived early, observed, took mental notes. Brooke floated through the room like a swan. Zach stood near the bar, holding court with donors, grinning like a man who believed the world owed him applause. I stayed invisible for an hour, just long enough for the room to swell with laughter and false nobility. Then I made my way toward the registration table and froze. There it was, on the glossy cover of their fundraiser booklet, The Thompson Rise, How We Built a Family Legacy from the Ground Up. Inside, they'd written a full story, a lie, a heartwarming tale about financial adversity, about a sister's generous spirit that reminded us what family means, followed by a section titled, Turning Trials into Triumphs. And under that, a full-page thank you to me, by name, to Haley, whose quiet contributions made this dream possible. I stopped breathing. People around me were reading it, nodding, whispering, how beautiful, so generous of her. As if I had willingly donated my life savings to fund their ego. As if I'd signed off on being their emotional prop. I wanted to tear it in half, to yell across the ballroom, "I didn't give you anything, you stole it!" But I didn't. I smiled, took one of the booklets, and walked straight up to my sister. She was standing under a chandelier, accepting compliments like confetti. When she saw me, her expression faltered for a half-second. Then she kissed my cheek. "You made it," So glad. I held up the booklet. Nice story. Her smile tightened. It's all true. You really did help us more than you know. Zach sidled up beside her, glass in hand. Great, isn't it? We figured we'd give credit where it's due. He clinked his drink against mine. And now you're part of something bigger. Something bigger. As if I should be honored. I looked him dead in the eyes. You ever going to pay me back? Brooke's face flushed. Zach just grinned. Oh, come on, Hales. Money's just energy. It circulates, and you don't even need it. You've got no mortgage, no kids, no real expenses. He shrugged. No legacy to build. That was it. That line. No legacy to build. I walked away. Quietly. But in my mind, something clicked. A door that had been creaking for years finally slammed shut. Later that night, they announced the silent auction winners. One item caught my attention. Weekend at a private lake house plus wellness coaching with Brooke Thompson. Value, $3,000. I watched as people clapped. Someone bid $2,600, then $2,800. They were selling the fantasy of their lives, and the crowd was buying it. My jaw clenched. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. It was identity theft, emotional theft. They had taken my narrative, painted it with glitter, and sold it back to the world with a bow. And I realized something chilling. If I didn't reclaim my name, they would build their empire on it. And worse, they'd make me smile while they did. After the event, I went home, sat in my apartment, lit only by the dim yellow of a bedside lamp. I opened my laptop, and this time, I didn't just update my resume. I built a blueprint, a roadmap to something bigger, a business I'd dreamed of for years, one I'd been too humble or scared to pursue. I wasn't just going to rebuild, I was going to outrun them, outgrow them, outclass them. And when the time came, when they needed me, I would be right there, not to help, but to stand still and silent, so they could hear the echo of what they once discarded. The next week, my mother called. She'd heard about the gala. Oh, honey, it was just lovely. I cried when I saw your name. Brooke really does admire you, you know. I bit my tongue. She didn't know. No one really knew. Because I had never told them. I never told anyone about the money, the transfers, the theft. And now I understood why. Because part of me had hoped they'd fix it. Say sorry. Make it right. But they wouldn't. They couldn't. Because people like Brooke and Zach don't apologize. They rebrand. They steal, spin, and smile. But that only works until the person they underestimated learns how to build a storm. And I had quietly become the weather. I didn't block Brooke or Zach. I didn't confront them again. I didn't even speak about it to friends. Because silence became my weapon. Not the kind used in bitterness or spite, but the kind sharpened by intention. The kind that watches while others perform, then builds something solid behind the curtain. The day after the gala, I opened a new checking account at a different bank. One that required two-step verification, biometric access, and came with a fraud protection advisor who actually listened. Then I filed a report with a financial crimes investigator. Quietly, privately. I didn't name names, not yet, but I documented everything. The dates, the amounts, the transfers, the account Zach had once helped me set up, just in case of emergencies. He wouldn't see it coming. Not because I was hiding, but because he believed I'd never do anything. That was his first mistake. I spent evenings researching grant opportunities and startup accelerators. At first, it was just noise, jargon, buzzwords. But after a few late nights and some strong coffee, I started to see a pattern. There was space in the world for women like me. Women who had been used, underestimated, labeled as helpers and supporters, but never as founders. I registered a domain, designed a logo, set up a consultation with a small business attorney who walked me through structuring a legitimate LLC. I didn't post about it, didn't hint at it, didn't even change my LinkedIn bio. I let it grow in the dark, like roots under winter frost. At work, I stopped staying late. I stopped covering other people's tasks. When my boss asked me to pick up an extra project last minute, I smiled and said, "Actually, I won't be able to." No apology, no explanation. And that moment, that pause where he waited for a reason, felt like the beginning of something sacred, the reintroduction of boundaries. I wasn't angry. I was done. And that was more powerful than any outburst I could have had. A month after the gala, Brooke invited me to brunch. "Just the girls," she wrote, followed by a string of heart emojis. The kind of message she sent when she needed something. I went. Wore neutral tones, light makeup, sat across from her in a sunlit cafe like nothing had ever happened. She talked about a new podcast she was starting, about how Zach had been consulting for a few small startups. Then she leaned in. "Do you think you could help us set up an EIN number? You're good at that boring admin stuff." I stirred my coffee. "I might be too busy right now." She blinked. "Busy with what?" I smiled. "Just clearing some things up." She laughed. "Must be nice having so much free time." I let the comment float in the air, didn't flinch. She didn't know what I was building. And that was the gift. Weeks passed. I kept moving in silence. I attended workshops online, free webinars at first, then paid masterclasses. I created a pitch deck, built a small client base, consulted for local nonprofits who needed help with administrative systems and digital transitions. I didn't advertise. Word got around through referrals, through trust. One night, I received an email from a woman named Marianne. She ran a regional grant foundation for women entrepreneurs. She'd heard about me from a client I'd helped streamline payroll systems for. "We're reviewing microgrant applicants," she wrote. "Would you be interested?" I applied that same night. 2 weeks later, I received a $25,000 grant. No fanfare, no applause. Just a wire transfer and a note. "We believe in quiet builders." I sat in my apartment, looking at the confirmation screen, and I let myself feel it. Not the revenge, not the justice. Just the quiet dignity of being seen, not as a donor, not as a prop, not as a supportive sister, but as a woman building something of her own. And here's the thing. I didn't need to beat them. I needed to detach from them. Emotionally, financially, spiritually. Because the real victory wasn't in watching them fall. It was in becoming someone who no longer cared whether they clapped. Still, I stayed close enough to watch. Brooke's podcast launched. 3 episodes in, she began soliciting donations. She talked about community uplift, while Zach shared strategies on how to scale with family capital. The irony made me chuckle, especially because I knew something they didn't. The IRS doesn't take kindly to misreported family donations, especially not when a fraud complaint with accompanying bank documentation is already under review. I never said a word. I just waited. Meanwhile, I took on 2 more clients. Then 4. Then a full rebrand. I hired a virtual assistant. Outsourced design. Filed my first set of quarterly taxes. Clean, efficient, fully traceable. No one knew except the people who mattered. The people I served. Because this wasn't about performance anymore. It was about peace. And that peace made me more powerful than I had ever been. One afternoon, I received a voicemail. It was Zach. "Hey, Haley, quick thing. We're being audited, and I think maybe that old PayPal login we used could cause confusion. Could you give me a call and clarify some stuff? Just want to make sure everything's clean." He sounded nervous. Panicked almost. I saved the message. Forwarded it to my case officer at the Financial Crimes Unit. Still didn't call him back. The next day, Brooke texted me. "Hey sis, I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen, then turned it off, because I wasn't ready to confront them. Not yet. The final scene had not arrived, and when it did, they wouldn't be able to talk their way out of it. It began with a knock, not dramatic, just a firm, rhythmic knock on the front door of Brooke and Zach's 2-story house in suburban Westgate, the one with the custom stone mailbox and fake lanterns flickering at dusk. Zach opened it, smiling like he always did when he assumed authority was on his side. Then he saw the badge, and his smile cracked. "Zachary Thompson?" the woman asked, holding up an ID. "We have questions regarding a financial misappropriation claim linked to several unauthorized transfers made over the past 18 months. Brooke was at the top of the stairs. She froze mid-step. "What is this?" I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. Because poetic justice doesn't arrive in raised voices or broken plates. It arrives in silence, through certified letters, traceable wires, subpoenaed bank statements, and a 3-ring binder of receipts. I had built that binder for 6 months, filed it under property recovery, and kept it in a fireproof lockbox. Every dollar, every date, every time they said I was just being generous, I kept it all. And now, the state was keeping it too. Brooke called me 3 times that day. Then she texted, "Why are you doing this? We're family." I read it while sipping tea in my apartment, the same one they once pitied me for living in. I let the steam rise. I didn't reply. Because that text wasn't a question. It was a refusal to accept consequence. A plea for the old Haley, the one who'd apologize just to keep the peace. But that version of me no longer existed. The next week, I filed a civil suit. Quietly, cleanly. I wasn't trying to ruin them. I just wanted the money back, plus interest, plus attorney fees. They countered with silence. Then, with an offer. "What if we settle this between us?" I declined, because this wasn't just about the account anymore. It was about truth. Legally acknowledged, court-stamped truth. I wanted it on record. I wanted the moment where a judge read their names and called their actions what they were. Fraud. Theft. Misuse of access and manipulation of family trust. And I got it. In a courthouse with flickering fluorescent lights and a bailiff who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, I got it. The judgment ruled in my favor. Full restitution, damages, legal fees. It took less than 30 minutes. Because facts don't need theatrics, they just need oxygen. A month later, I was invited to speak at a local women in business seminar. Someone had referred me. Word had gotten around about a woman who built a consultancy from scratch, secured grants, and navigated a legal storm without ever raising her voice. I spoke about boundaries, about self-trust, about how silence isn't weakness, it's discipline. After the talk, a woman in her 50s came up to me, eyes glistening. "My daughter's in a situation like that right now. I'm going to send her your story." I nodded. Because stories like mine aren't rare, they're just rarely told. We're taught to protect the people who harm us, to keep family secrets, to play nice. But I had learned that niceness without self-respect is just a slow death, and I was done dying in pieces. A few weeks later, I walked into a grocery store and saw them, Brooke and Zach. They were at the self-checkout line, arguing about coupons. She spotted me and froze. He looked smaller. Not physically, spiritually. They didn't speak. Neither did I. But as I walked past, Brooke whispered, just loud enough, "You really destroyed us." And for the first time, I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "No, you did that. I just stopped covering it up." Then I walked away, calm, precise, whole. That week, I signed a lease for a small office downtown. It had a big window, a real desk, and a plant I named Truth. Because truth, when nurtured, grows things. I didn't post about the win, didn't frame the court judgment. But I did take a photo of the view, saved it in a folder labeled, "Proof I Came Back." And I kept going. Client after client, referral after referral. Each one built on trust, not image. I never mentioned Brooke or Zach. Didn't need to. Because the best revenge is becoming someone they can't touch. Someone they don't even recognize. It was Lucy's birthday. She was turning 9. My niece. Brooke's daughter. The one who once asked me why I didn't have kids and called me just Haley. The one who didn't know any better back then. The party was being held at the same country club where Brooke had thrown the gala. This time, no silent auctions. No gold-lettered booklets. Just a balloon arch, a table of cupcakes, and rented folding chairs. I almost didn't go. But my mom asked me to. It would mean a lot to Lucy, she said. She's been asking for you. So I went. Wore soft gray. No jewelry, no makeup. Not to fade, but to observe. Because presence isn't about being seen, it's about being felt. When I walked in, I saw them. Brooke by the gift table, forcing a smile that didn't quite hold. Zach in the corner, checking his phone like it owed him something. They both glanced up. The air changed, just slightly, like someone had opened a window and let in the truth. My mother rushed to hug me. She whispered, "I'm so glad you came," then added, almost like a secret, "You look grounded." I did. Because I was. Lucy spotted me. She ran over and wrapped her arms around my waist. "Auntie Haley, you came." I knelt down. "Wouldn't miss it." She pointed to a table of crafts. "I saved you a seat." And just like that, I was hers. We painted glitter frames and glued pom-poms to paper crowns. I made her laugh so hard juice came out of her nose. And I noticed something. The other parents were watching. Smiling, curious, because I didn't look like a woman wronged. I looked unbothered, powerful. An hour later, there was cake. Everyone gathered. Brooke stood up to make a toast. Her voice trembled just slightly. "Thank you all for coming. It means so much to see everyone together, especially family." Her eyes flicked to me. I didn't blink. She raised her glass. "Here's to the people who lift us up." A few claps, some nods. But the room felt off, because words like that ring hollow when spoken by someone who has never lifted anyone but themselves. After cake, I stood near the back patio, watching kids play tag. That's when Zach approached. He looked thinner, eyes heavier. His usual bravado had dissolved into something human. He cleared his throat. "Hey." I turned, waited. He rocked on his heels. I know things got messy and maybe I handled stuff wrong. I tilted my head. Let the silence stretch. He chuckled awkwardly. "You know Brooke's not sleeping, right? She's not herself. This whole court thing, it broke her." I didn't react. Because guilt is loud, and truth is quiet. He shifted. "She's scared you'll keep going. That you'll, I don't know, take more." I finally spoke. "I didn't take anything," then added softly, "I just took back." He stared at me. No comeback, no smirk, just the mirror of his own reflection. Finally clear. Inside, Brooke was organizing gift bags. I walked up behind her. She stiffened, then turned with a rehearsed smile. "Haley, did you want a cupcake to go?" I looked at her. Really looked. This was the same woman who once joked that I had too much free time. The same woman who wrote me into her lies and called it gratitude. The same woman who used my silence as a stepping stone. Now, she was brittle, cracking, trying to keep control of a story that no longer belonged to her. I didn't take the bait. Didn't bring up the court case. Didn't mention the judgment, or the liens, or the whispers I knew were circling her PTA group. I just smiled and said, "Lucy's lucky to have you." That stunned her. Because it wasn't sarcasm, it was grace, real grace. The kind that says, "You can't touch me anymore, and I don't need you to understand why." As I turned to leave, she reached out. "Haley, are we ever going to be okay again?" I paused. Let the question breathe. Then answered, "We were never not okay. You just mistook my silence for approval." She blinked. No tears. Just realization. And that was enough. Outside, the sun had softened. Golden hour. The kind of light that flatters everything. I walked past a few parents I didn't know. One of them stopped me. "You're Haley, right?" she said. "Brooke's sister?" I nodded. She smiled. I've heard about you. The one who started that consulting firm. My cousin works with you. Says you're the real deal. I smiled back. Tell her I said thank you. And just like that, I left. No scene, no mic drop. Just a quiet exit. Because sometimes the loudest thing you can say is nothing. They once said I had no legacy to build. But now I had something better. A name they couldn't use. A life they couldn't spin. A version of me they could no longer control. And in that stillness, they heard everything. A month after Lucy's party, I found a letter wedged into my mailbox. No stamp, no envelope, just a folded piece of ivory stationery with my name scrawled across the front in Brooke's handwriting. Soft cursive, still trying to appear composed. I didn't open it right away. I placed it on the kitchen counter beside my morning mug of tea and stared at it through the steam. There was no return address, no apology on the outside, just my name. Like that alone could carry the weight of everything she hadn't said before. I let it sit there for 3 days. Because healing isn't about racing to reopen old wounds. It's about knowing you don't have to respond to every knock. And for once, I didn't owe anyone my reaction. When I finally opened it, it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even emotional. Just a few lines, a confession, without saying the word. She wrote, I didn't realize how much of you I was borrowing until you took it back. I'm not asking for anything. Just, thank you for protecting yourself. I sat with that for a while. It didn't fix anything, but it was something. And sometimes, closure doesn't come in the form of justice. It comes in recognition. Recognition that you were never crazy, never petty, never wrong for finally drawing a line. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I no longer needed to explain myself. There's peace in not being misunderstood anymore. I folded the letter, tucked it into a small box with other relics of who I used to be, the PayPal printouts, the old reunion invitation, even a photo of me and Brooke from our childhood, matching pigtails, gap-toothed grins. I sealed the box and labeled it, the version I outgrew. Then I slid it to the back of my closet. Not to forget, but to honor. Because even the pain had purpose. Spring arrived, gentle and green. One morning, I stood barefoot on the hardwood floor of my new office space, sunlight spilling in from the east window. The walls were still bare, but the air smelled like fresh paint and possibility. There was no grand opening, no ribbon cutting. Just me, a cup of coffee, and a quiet smile. I framed my business license, placed it above the desk, not because I needed validation, but because I'd built something real. Something they couldn't erase. Something they could never claim. A week later, Lucy sent me a drawing. Crayons on printer paper. It showed 2 stick figures standing under a rainbow. One had long brown hair. The other, a blue dress and big glasses. She labeled them me plus Auntie Haley. And at the bottom, she'd written in bold purple letters, "You make me feel safe." That was it. That was everything. I placed it on my desk, right beside the laptop that now held contracts, client rosters, and emails from women asking how I'd done it. How I'd gone from the helper to someone who held her own name in both hands. On a quiet Friday, I took a walk down by the lake, the one I used to dream near when I still believed peace lived somewhere far from me. I wore no watch, no makeup, just myself, whole. As I stood on the dock, watching sunlight ripple across the surface, I realized something simple and profound. They hadn't just underestimated me. They had taught me how to protect what I build, taught me how to stop over-explaining, taught me that boundaries are not walls. They are doors you lock when needed. And I was finally done leaving mine open for people who didn't wipe their feet before entering. A couple I didn't recognize strolled past with a toddler. The child pointed at the water and laughed. The woman smiled at me. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" "It really is," I said. And I meant it. Not just the weather, but the way my body no longer braced for impact. The way my voice didn't shake anymore. The way I had finally returned to myself. As I turned to leave the dock, a gust of wind lifted my scarf. The soft blue one Mom gave me years ago. It fluttered, twisted, then landed softly against my back. I took that as a sign of release, of grace, of chapters that end without slamming shut. Because sometimes the best closure isn't an apology, it's peace that no longer requires one. And as I walked away, slow, grounded, light, I knew they may remember me as the woman who took it too far, but I will remember myself as the woman who finally took it back. Not the money, not the power, but the permission to live fully, freely, and without explanation.